Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails India's ability to break barriers across sectors, addresses the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit in New Delhi. Arab states urge U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to work for a ceasefire in Gaza. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen visits Kiev ahead of a report on accession progress. Both Russia and Ukraine claim attacking each other's posts. The death toll from the Friday night 6.4 earthquake in Nepal crosses 150. Rescue and relief operations continue. Pakistan beats New Zealand by the Duckworth-Lewis method in a rain-interrupted match of the World Cup at Bengaluru. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit 2023, and the Prime Minister spoke on India's recent development strides. Beyond barriers is the theme of this year's summit, and the Prime Minister highlighted the country's achievements during the last 9 years. The Prime Minister said that global agencies have started giving an upward revision to the Indian economy. He expressed the hope that people would support the current government in the next elections.
देश में अगले वर्ष होने वाले चुनावों की चर्चा हो रही है, तो आपकी थीम है बियॉन्ड बैरियर्स। और मैं जनता के बीच रहना जीने वाला इंसान हूँ, पॉलिटिकल आदमी हूँ, तो और जनप्रतिनिधि हूँ, तो मुझे उसमें कुछ एक संदेश दिखता है। आमतौर पर ओपिनियन पोल चुनाव के कुछ हफ्ते पहले आते हैं और बताते हैं क्या होने वाला है, लेकिन आपने साफ संकेत दे दिया है कि देश की जनता इस बार सारे बैरियर्स तोड़कर हमारा समर्थन करने वाली है।
Prime Minister also spoke about the country's progress being witnessed since his government took office in 2014.
2014 में जब हमारी सरकार बनी थी और हमारा सेवा काल शुरू हुआ था, उस वक्त इस समिट की थीम थी रीशेपिंग इंडिया। यानी एसटी ग्रुप ये मानकर चल रहा था कि आने वाले समय में भारत में बहुत कुछ बदलेगा, रीशेप होगा।
Prime Minister also said that India is crossing all barriers as India has reached those parts of the moon where no country has gone before.
आज भारत हर बैरियर तोड़ते हुए चांद पर वहां पहुंचा है जहां कोई नहीं पहुंचा है। आज भारत हर चुनौती को पार करते हुए डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन में नंबर 1 बना है। आज भारत हर बाधा से निकलकर मोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में लीड कर ले रहा है। आज भारत स्टार्टअप्स की दुनिया में टॉप 3 में है। आज भारत दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा स्किल्ड पूल अपने आप बना रहा है। आज भारत G20 जैसे आयोजनों में अपना परचम लहरा रहा है। आज भारत अपने को हर बंधन से मुक्त करके आगे बढ़ रहा है। और आपने सुना ही होगा, सितारों के आगे जहां और भी है। भारत इतने पर ही रुकने वाला नहीं है।
Well, hectic diplomatic efforts are on to persuade Israel to significantly pause its Gaza counteroffensive as the conflict to wipe out Hamas enters its 29th day. The U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken met with Arab leaders in Amman, where they pressed for an immediate ceasefire. Meanwhile, Israeli military announced a 3-hour Gaza highway clearance for evacuees on Saturday. Raghav Kumar Jha reports.
Plumes of smoke flared in the sky of Gaza as Israeli military operation continued on the 29th day of the conflict. Israeli army said its soldiers thwarted many attempts by Hamas to attack Israeli troops from tunnel shafts and military compounds and killed a number of Palestinian fighters. Meanwhile, after United States called for a significant pause in the fighting for release of captives in Gaza, Israeli military announced 3-hour Gaza highway clearance for evacuees on Saturday. In a social media post in Arabic, the military said the Salah ad-Din road could be used between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. If you care about yourself and your loved ones, heed our instruction to head south. On the other hand, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stepped up his frantic diplomacy on Saturday, trying to build support for planning a post-conflict future for Gaza as he continued his second urgent mission to the Middle East. On Friday, Israel refused to agree to a temporary ceasefire until the release of over 240 hostages taken by Hamas during their attack on October 7.
We are proceeding with all our might, and Israel refuses any temporary ceasefire that does not include the return of our kidnapped hostages. Israel will not permit the transfer of fuel to the Gaza Strip and opposes the transfer of funding to Gaza.
Antony Blinken met with leaders of Lebanon and Qatar and foreign ministers of United States allied Arab states in Amman on Saturday. In the meeting, Arab leaders pressed Antony Blinken for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
The priority now is to ending this war, to saving innocent lives, to preventing further destruction, to restoring hope, and to stopping the very dangerous dehumanization. All lives matter to all of us.
We come together here today sharing the same fundamental interest and objective: to end this conflict in a way that ensures lasting peace and security in the region. We may have different views and positions on certain necessary steps to achieve that objective. But today we reaffirmed our individual commitments to continuing to work toward that end, an end that we share.
U.S. Secretary of State also met with the head of the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. He lauded the efforts of the UN agency in providing help to the needy people in Gaza. Meanwhile, in a recent tragic incident, an airstrike on an ambulance in Gaza led to the loss of several lives. The Israeli army said that the ambulance was being used by a Hamas terrorist cell and they took action to neutralize the threat. So far, humanitarian aid to Gaza is concerned. Indonesia has released the first batch of humanitarian aid encompassing food and medical supplies. Raghav Kumar Jha reporting for DD India.
Well, Amritpal Singh now joins us on the phone line from Jericho. Amrit, Arab countries are urging the U.S. to use its good offices to reach a ceasefire. And Qatar also suggests that negotiations with Hamas for hostage release are not going well. What's Israel saying under the circumstances?
Well, Israel is adamant that it does not want to go in for any kind of ceasefire. It does not even want to concede a humanitarian pause. After the U.S. President Mark asked for a humanitarian pause, and this was he was the last in a long list of leaders of already, including the Western leaders who are allies of Israel, asking for a pause. Israel, reacted very angrily with Netanyahu saying that would America have gone in for a ceasefire after 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, and then Antony Blinken had to be rushed to Israel for the third time in as many weeks. So And when he suggested to Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet over a long meeting, a 6-hour-long meeting yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister came out with a statement with Antony Blinken sitting right next to him, saying there is no question of a pause, let alone a ceasefire. So the maximum they've conceded today was that they said that we give a 3-hour window for the civilians to move, and from the Gaza city to southern Gaza. But in southern Gaza, aerial bombing continues, and the ground operations continue. So Israel is not letting up. The Arab countries are trying to build pressure. The meeting that took place in Jordan today with Antony Blinken, Arab countries spoke in one voice asking for a humanitarian ceasefire. But,
yes.
The Americans either have limited the bandwidth with the Israelis at this point in time, or are just paying lip service, supporting the military campaign of the Israelis. So that is the situation. As far as the situation on the hostages is concerned, Qatar has made it clear that the Hamas, again, is adamant on its demands. It has two set of immediate demands. They have said we can go in for a prisoner swap. We leave the hostages. You leave the Palestinian prisoners who are in Israeli jails in thousands of numbers, both from the Gaza Strip and from West Bank. One, they want that. Second, they want to see a complete ceasefire at the earliest. These are their immediate demands. They also have long-term demands of Israel stopping Israeli settlements in West Bank and lifting the 17-year-old siege on the Gaza Strip. Given the circumstances, I don't think both sides are yielding from their maximalist positions. Yes. And it's almost been close to about a month now that the hostages have been taken. So that's where the situation stands. And let me also, in the same breath, Mark, point out that there were hectic protests by the families of the hostages in Tel Aviv. They are saying, they are threatening that we will set up a camp, a tent city sort of a thing, or put up tents right at the the steps of the Kiryat military base in Tel Aviv, because they believe that the Israeli government hasn't done enough, because they are getting restive. But the Israeli response to that is that the more military pressure we put in, the Hamas would only then be amenable to releasing the hostages. Yes,
Mark. But reports also suggest, Amrit, that Hamas, it claims it has the wherewithal for the long haul. How realistic are these claims?
The fact remains that information warfare in these days is an integral part of military strategy. So what both sides say have to be taken with a pinch of salt, because they are also not just fighting on the ground, they are also creating perceptions about each other and about the situation, because the world opinion would be shaped by that. Now, the fact of what we know for a fact is Hamas has 40,000 fighters. It has a vast network of tunnels. Some put it at 400 to 500 kilometers in that narrow strip called Gaza Strip. Some 1,300 to 1,400 tunnels, some of them opening up into Israel, some opening up into Egypt. When the Israelis have been saying that there is no full fuel shortage, that partly may be true, because the Hamas may have stocked up fuel to, light up those tunnels, to fire, to propel their missiles, to propel their rockets, a huge cache of arms that they have to keep the air conditioning and the airflow in the tunnels, etc. So the Hamas, if it executed what it did on the 7th of October when it executed, it would have factored in that the Israelis will hit back, and they would have factored in that a long haul. So we don't know, but independent analysts say they would have supplies both of weapons, food and fuel for at least months.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Amritpal Singh, for that update. Amrit joining us from Jericho. Still to come now on DD India News Hour. Both Russia and Ukraine try to beat the stalemate as the war enters its 619th day, the Russia-Ukraine war. Pakistan authorities send undocumented Afghans to transit camps.
How do you evaluate ISA's progress so far? Are you satisfied with it?
In terms of money, in terms of programs, in terms of memberships, all have gone up dramatically.
Has India played a satisfactory leadership role in ISA?
The Indian experience has led the ISA. Also, Indian financial resources have been at the heart of ISA moving ahead.
Who foots the bill around the world for solar energy?
Largely the private sector, but government guarantees are important for this to move into areas which are yet underserved by the private sector financing.
What is the first target that you would like to achieve?
The first target is get the regulatory structures in place so that solar becomes the energy source of choice.
You're watching DD India News Arm. My name is Mark Lynn. While diplomatic efforts seem to intensify, DD India's correspondent Amritpal Singh was at the Golan Heights of, this is on the Israel-Syria border, and he gives us a ground report from there on the threat of a regional escalation of the Israel-Hamas conflict.
I'm right now standing at the Golan Heights. This is the border that you see behind me, is the border of Israel with Syria. So right now, the threat of a regional escalation looms large, though Syria has been, quite, its military capabilities have been depleted by the constant conflict that is going on in Syria, or the civil war, which has been going on for more than 2 years. But Iran's proxies are still active, and that is what the international community is concerned about, that if Iran starts acting through its proxies out of Syria, the Hezbollah anyway is backed by Iran, and also the Hamas, so it could spill over. There could be a regional escalation, and the world cannot afford a second war. Right now, the first war, Ukraine-Russia crisis anyway, has affected global supply chains, and another war would mean disaster for the world. And that is why you see hectic diplomacy. Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, was in Tel Aviv. He held long meetings with Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet, and later traveled to Jordan to see, with two objectives. One, to see that it does not escalate beyond Hamas and Israel, and the second, to see how humanitarian aid can be increased into the Gaza Strip, because there's a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding there. Amritpal Singh for DD India at the Golan Heights.
Well, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen made her 6th wartime visit to Kiev as the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict entered its 619th day, while the United States has announced providing additional arms and equipment to Ukraine worth $425 million. Let's look at this report.
As the Russia-Ukraine conflict entered 619th day, intense fighting continued between the two sides. At least 9 people were killed and 9 others got severely injured in a Ukrainian missile attack on an employment center in Russian-occupied town in Kherson, the region's governor Vladimir Saldo said. Both Russia and Ukraine claim to have taken new military actions against each other. The Russian Defense Ministry said in the past week its army repelled the attacks of the Ukrainian army in many directions, including Kupiansk, Krasny Liman and Donetsk. Also, it attacked a Ukrainian ammunition depot and shot down over 10 fighters from the Ukrainian side. On the other hand, the Ukrainian side claims to have carried out several strikes on the Russian air defense missile system and attacked its electronic warfare systems, radars and ammunition depots. Meanwhile, the United States has announced to provide additional arms and equipment to Ukraine worth $425 million. The package makes use of the last of the money from over $18 billion Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which gave Biden administration the option to purchase weapons from industry rather than drawing from the US weapons stocks. Since the Russian invasion in February last year, the US has sent about $44 billion worth of security assistance to Ukraine. Amid all this, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen made her 6th wartime visit to Kyiv. Her visit comes ahead of a report that the European Union is expected to present next week about Ukraine's progress in its membership bid.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin today laid flowers at the monument of Kuzma Minin and Dmitry Pozharsky at the Red Square in the Russian capital Moscow. This marks National Unity Day. The ceremony was attended by several religious representatives as well as members of the public and also youth organizations. But the Russian president had instituted this holiday in 2005. It replaces an annual Soviet-era celebration of the Bolshevik Revolution. Guinea's former military ruler Moussa Dadis Camara was freed from prison by heavily armed men, the country's Justice Minister Charles Wright had said. The armed group stormed a jail in Conakry, and this happened Saturday morning, freeing Camara and 3 other high-ranking officers. Looking at the situation, the country has shut its borders. Camara and others have been on trial since last year. They have been accused of orchestrating a stadium massacre in which 150 people were killed. This happened during pro-democracy movement in 2009. Over 500 migrants were rescued at the Atlantic Ocean off Canary Islands in Spain. This is what a Spanish Coast Guard official had said. Now, what's happened is that the number of people arriving to this archipelago this year has neared an all-time record. This is since 2006. 2 dead bodies were also recovered among those rescued from 4 boats in the waters of El Hierro, which is the smallest of the Canary Islands. Now, according to the Interior Ministry of Spain, a total of 30,705 undocumented migrants had reached the Canary Islands in the first 10 months of this year. Tehreek-e-Jihad terrorists attacked an Air Force base in central Pakistan early on Saturday. 3 aircraft and a fueling tanker were damaged after gunmen, terrorists in fact, had stormed the Pakistani Air Force training base in Manwali, inflicting casualties. The Pakistani military said a combing and clearance operation had taken place. The 9 terrorists were killed and they had been eliminated. Pakistan news continues. Police had started search and cordon operations in areas where Afghans had been residing after the expiry of a deadline to expel all undocumented foreigners from that country. Dozens of foreigners, mostly Afghans, they were at the Karachi police station as they waited to be shifted to temporary transit camps. Police carried out a search and cordon operation in Junejo colony. This is a refugee settlement where they searched more than 900 houses. Pakistan has brushed off calls from the United Nations, also rights groups and Western embassies, to reconsider its plan to expel more than 1 million of the 4 million Afghans who are in that country, saying that they had been involved in militant attacks or terrorist attacks and crimes that undermine the security of Pakistan. Kabul, of course, denies all this. But many of the migrants had fled Afghanistan during the decades of armed conflict that has been happening since the 1970s, when the Islamist Taliban's takeover after the withdrawal of the US-led coalition forces. Also now, this is, of course, it has increased since 2021 after the Taliban takeover, since the US-led coalition forces had left. Now, an update on the rescue and relief operations in Nepal. The country was hit, as we said, by a 6.4 magnitude earthquake. It happened Friday night. We'll get you that story in a little while. A local spin-off of the, this is of the renowned Helsinki We are going back again to the Nepal story. Let's give you that story. We are talking about an update from Nepal. Nepal had a 6.4 earthquake last evening. The death toll has crossed 150. Here's a report.
Deadly quake hits Nepal with many killed and scourge injured. Epicenter of the quake was centered in west of Nepal and death toll is rising. The shallow quake struck at 11:47 on Friday around the western area of Jajarkot, a hilly district around 500 kilometers west of the capital Kathmandu. Nepal's Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal visited quake survivors. Dahal offered condolences and support to people who had been evacuated to shelter in Jajarkot, western Nepal, after their homes were destroyed. He also appealed everyone concerned to help with the rescue and relief efforts.
As Nepal has struck with the recent tremor, we have witnessed the huge damages of infrastructure. Government are working on ground. Injured were shifted to hospitals. Rescue works are underway.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed grief over the loss of lives and damage due to the earthquake in Nepal. In a tweet, PM said, India stands in solidarity with the people of Nepal and is ready to extend all possible assistance. Our thoughts are with the bereaved families and we wish the injured a quick recovery. The director of National Center for Seismology said that the intensity of the tremors in Nepal were strong, but when it came to Delhi, it reduced.
It was the 7 intensity, very strong intensity at Nepal. But when you come to Delhi here, Delhi is in this side, okay? So you come to Delhi, then you see it was the reduced and it was in between there. Here is somewhere Delhi. So here is the Delhi. So it was in between 3 and 4, 4 and 5 in between. Magnitude 6.4 is the content of energy, okay? So that's why more energy 6.4 generated and then we felt the shaking also.
The quake is dubbed as Nepal's worst quake in 8 years, with agency inputs DD India.
And coming up now, we'll be discussing where things stand in Israel's effort to eliminate the Hamas terrorist group. And US and China also holding the first round of maritime consultations. They're consulting on a number of issues and across various sectors.
Platform for the developing world, amplifying the voice of the global south with a focus on the growing economies, resolving the conflicts, showcasing the culture, tradition, heritage and diversity. Watch Voice of the Global South at these times on DD India.
How do you evaluate ISA's progress so far? Are you satisfied with it?
In terms of money, in terms of programs, in terms of memberships, all have gone up dramatically.
Has India played a satisfactory leadership role in ISA?
The Indian experience has led the ISA. Also, Indian financial resources have been at the heart of ISA moving ahead.
Who foots the bill around the world for solar energy?
Largely the private sector, but government guarantees are important for this to move into areas which are yet underserved by the private sector financing.
What is the first target that you would like to achieve?
The first target is get the regulatory structures in place so that solar becomes the energy source of choice.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. My name is Mark Lin. Here's a recap of our main stories. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails India's ability to break barriers across sectors. He addresses the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit in New Delhi. Arab states urge the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to work for a ceasefire in Gaza. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen visits Kiev ahead of a report on accession progress. Both Russia and Ukraine claim that they've been hitting each other's targets. Well, let's now discuss the ongoing situation in the Middle East, the Israel-Hamas conflict. And joining us for a perspective on this, we have Dr. Anshu Joshi, Professor of the School of International Studies, JNU. Thank you, Professor Joshi. Now, Israel is exercising its right to self-defense. It's also targeting a terrorist organization, as we know. But this conflict seems to be affecting Israel's relations with the wider world. How do you view it?
First and foremost, we should see that this current fight is between Israel and Hamas. And we should understand that Hamas is a terrorist organization, and Hamas cannot represent the face of Palestine. Now, looking at the historic conflict between Israel and Palestine, so Mark, I don't see that this violent conflict between Israel and Hamas will stop in a day or two. And indeed, it is impacting relations of Israel with rest of the world, mostly with the Arab nations. But we must also understand that it is a fight against terror. And we should also not forget that this entire violent situation was started by Hamas on 7th of October when it attacked Israel during the wee hours. And that is what Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is time and again stating. He's saying that it's a fight against a terrorist organization, and we will collect the full price from the murderers. He is calling Hamas as a terrorist organization openly. But
Yes.
indeed, Hamas has its own support, and the kind of support it has got from rest of the most of the Islamic world, I should say. The countries like Iran and now Turkey. We could see the statements from Erdogan this week, wherein he referred to this war and he took it to a different dimension, calling it like a crusade war. We all know the history of that war. So indeed, there are countries with which Israel's relations have deterred already. But at the same time, we should also not forget that there are nations like United States of America, and there are many other countries that want to contribute to this fight against terror.
Indeed. Professor Joshi, also, how seriously should the world be taking the reports of a humanitarian crisis in Gaza? I mean, we are seeing images and all that, but, the health ministry or health authorities in Gaza are controlled by Hamas, and maybe the figures and the data could be inflated.
Historically, we know that how this Gaza Strip has a strategic importance, and right from the beginning, when Israel was formed, during the later developments, Gaza was taken over by Hamas later, and mostly Hamas controls this particular area. And we know what is happening presently. We can see many reports and videos and so on. And indeed, there is a humanitarian crisis for the population that is living in Gaza, because people are dependent on international aids to survive in this particular region. And it has one of the densest populations in the world. But at the same time, Mark, we should look at the stability, peace and security of the entire region. So isn't Israel paying the price? We should be looking at the people of Israel also. And at the same time, we should also look at the recent developments wherein leaders, including the Prime Minister of Britain and President of United States of America, Biden, they visited Tel Aviv, and they tried to look at the situation, and they try to resolve the situation, especially this humanitarian crisis. But at the same time, we should also look at the present development wherein most of the countries of the world have denied their support in case of giving shelters to refugees from Palestine or for that matter from Gaza Strip. So
Okay.
that itself raises a question why. And when we look back at the history, especially of Europe, we can see that in recent past, how providing shelters to these refugees actually came with, some repercussions, especially some political crisis for these countries. So there are a lot of complex dimensions involved that are political, social in nature, and they cannot be ignored.
Indeed. So you talk about those complex dimensions, and then how do experts like you actually sift through all of course, there's a propaganda war going on as well, sift through all the fake narratives to try and define what the real picture is at a time like this?
It is a testing time, I would say, and it's very unfortunate to see that on one hand, already one theater of war is going on in Ukraine, wherein this Russia-Ukraine war is not stopping at all. On the other hand, this conflict between Hamas and Israel is escalating every day. And I do see direct and indirect involvement of other countries also into it. And then there are countries that are adding fuel to this already violent conflict. I can also see a humanitarian crisis, but as I said, it is related to the people of the entire region and not only of a particular place. And at this time,
Yes.
there's a question mark on the role of the international institutions like United Nations, Mark. And
Okay.
there are other multilateral platforms also. What are they doing? So we need to find out a comprehensive and long-term solution of the problem. And
All right.
only then this conflict may end.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Professor Anshu Joshi, for your perspective on this developing situation. Our next story, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese landed in China. He's on a 4-day visit, and this is the first visit to China by the Australian Prime Minister since 2016, by any Australian Prime Minister since 2016. On Saturday, he met with the Chinese Premier Li Qiang. This happened in Shanghai.
Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on Saturday became the first Australian leader to visit China since 2016. Following his arrival, Albanese met Chinese Premier Li Qiang on Saturday in Shanghai. Ahead of his visit, Albanese said Australia has put dialogue at the heart of efforts to stabilize relationship with China. Albanese's other engagement in China includes a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Albanese's visit to China comes following strained ties between two nations over several years due to dispute over Chinese telecom firm Huawei, espionage and COVID-19. The Australian Prime Minister's visit to China comes on the heels of other Western leaders' recent engagement with Beijing. On Friday, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz held a talk with Chinese President Xi through video link. While Greek Prime Minister held talks with Chinese leader Xi in Beijing on Friday, she said China is willing to work with EU to adhere to correct mutual understanding and invigorate mutual beneficial cooperation across the board. In another development, China's foreign ministry said that China and the United States would hold consultation on arms control and non-proliferation in coming days. Besides, US President Joe Biden is expected to meet with Chinese President Xi in San Francisco in November. Syed Absarul Hassan for DD India.
China's Vice President Hang Singh and South African Deputy President Paul Mashalit, they co-chaired the 8th plenary session of the China-South Africa Binational Commission. This happened in Beijing. Han Singh said that the Commission has been playing a key role. This is in coordinating bilateral cooperation in important areas. The Chinese Vice President also called on the two sides to consolidate mutual political trust and to continue to firmly support each other on issues concerning each other's core interests. Masha Tile, who represents South Africa, said that he stands ready to work with China to make full use of the positive role of the Binational Commission, the mechanism that is, and also to promote development of bilateral relations. The Chanakya Defense Dialogue 2023, that's a two-day ground-breaking event. It concluded today at the Manekshaw Center in New Delhi. This dialogue is inspired by the ancient strategist Chanakya, and it unfolded crucial discussions on global and regional security issues. Ambassador Kanwar Sibal, who was the former Foreign Secretary of India, and the Chancellor of JNU, that's what he is currently, in his address said that the strategic balance does not mean fence-sitting. It is what we must do to preserve our autonomy.
There's absolutely need for India to maintain a strategic balance. Now, if we have strategic partnerships, God knows, with the 30, 35 countries, which means that our strategic interest and our strategic footprint is much wider than simply engagement with the major powers. And since there is this global churn where things keep changing, challenges keep arising, then how do we maintain this strategic balance with all our major partners in the West, in the East, in the North, in the South, if you like? So it's not fence-sitting. It is what we must do to preserve our autonomy.
A local event of the renowned Helsinki headquartered tech startup Slush. It was held in Gurugram in the vicinity of the national capital in New Delhi. This event brings together venture capitalists and startup professionals. So Slush D, slushed in a sense, it was a platform for startups to engage in discussions and knowledge sharing related to artificial intelligence and also deep tech, with the theme unleashing the power of deep tech and artificial intelligence. India's Minister of Commerce and Industry, Piyush Goyal, addressed this event. He addressed startups, investors, and founders of the startup ecosystem.
From about 450 startups registered 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago, we boast of over 115,000 startups being registered in our DPI. What a transformational journey. And this journey wouldn't have been possible but for that small capital that was provided to our talented youth with great ideas.
Excited to be here at Slush, in particular also because I'm from the Nordics, I'm from Sweden, and Slush is a conference that started in Finland. It's been 2 days of meeting startups, investors, people from the government, and the whole ecosystem. And it's been very encouraging for me, and I had a great time.
I've heard a lot that India is the future, and after being here now, I really do believe that India is definitely one of the major players in the startup ecosystem, not only now, but it has the potential to grow much, much more. One reason why we are here with Slush is we go to ecosystems and startup communities where there's definitely something going on, but we just want to unlock that full potential, and I think that's definitely been done here today.
Still to come here on DD India News Hour. Pakistan gets lucky against New Zealand in a high-scoring rain-hit World Cup game. And table toppers India to take on the second-place South Africa in a high-octane World Cup encounter at the Eden Gardens, Kolkata, on Sunday.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such changemakers.
Watch Changemakers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. 5 schools, including a bilingual one, integrated Jewish-Arab in Jerusalem. They triumphed at the world's best school prizes on Saturday for feats including fostering unity, helping the local community, and supporting mental health. The University of Edinburgh has returned the skulls of 4 Taiwan warriors to Taiwanese indigenous leaders. This happened nearly 150 years after their deaths. The repatriation is the first of its kind for Taiwan. This is according to the university, and it comes as Edinburgh and similar institutions across Europe are reckoning with their colonial past. At least 7 people have been killed in central Tuscany when Storm Kiran swept through Italy after causing chaos and in more western parts of Europe. Towns and villages were damaged as torrential rains moved from the coastal city of Livorno to the inland valley of Mugello. The public will soon get up close and they will look at a unique asteroid. This is a sample named Bennu, brought to Earth by NASA. This is after a display was unveiled at the National Museums of Natural History in Washington. The asteroid is found to have carbon-rich soil, including water-bearing clay minerals. Extreme weather events are being witnessed across the globe that we've been seeing for a long time. Here's an update.
Countries across the world are witnessing extreme weather events. At many places, air quality has become a matter of concern. Breathlessness, irritation in eyes, itchy throats and coughs. This is how people of India's national capital, Delhi, are living in the month of November as a thick layer of toxic haze has descended. The air quality index continues to deteriorate into severe category in several parts. The government has announced an air emergency, shutting down schools and construction.
The AQI crossing 400 and going into severe category is mainly due to factors like combustion, due to the transportation, or whether it is the burning of the agricultural waste. Exposure needs to be avoided because pollution is directly responsible for many diseases. So the vulnerable population, whether it is the very old, small children, pregnant ladies, or people having already some respiratory conditions, they need to avoid as much as possible. They have any symptom, they should visit doctors to take treatment immediately.
India is not the only country battling these weather extremes. Wildfires and blazes are engulfing parts of Spain and Australia. Around 350 people had to be evacuated as a result of a wildfire that blazed close to the coastal town of Gandia in eastern Spain. Bushfires blazed across Australian states of New South Wales and Queensland, killing at least 2 and destroying dozens of homes. Storm Ciarán lashed northwestern Europe on Thursday, killing at least 7 people and forcing the Italian government to declare a state of emergency. Scientific studies indicate that extreme weather events are likely to become more frequent or more intense with human-induced climate change.
Let's take a look now at other stories making the news. The Bhutanese king, Jigme Khesar Namgyel Wangchuk, has arrived at the Ayora retreat. This is in Kaziranga of the Indian northeastern state of Assam. The Environment Minister and Agriculture Minister, along with senior officials, received him. The Bhutanese king met with the Chief Minister of Assam on Friday and held discussions on infrastructure, partnerships, cooperation in healthcare, and people-to-people ties. Heavy rains lashed parts of Tamil Nadu on Saturday, and the India Meteorological Department has issued an orange alert predicting adverse weather conditions until Sunday. The onset of the northeast monsoon has intensified in the state, leading to heavy to very heavy rainfall in southern districts. A massive fire erupted at a factory in a part of India's national capital in Delhi in Bhawana. A total of 20 fire tenders rushed to the spot. There were no injuries reported when the reports last came in. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's bring you the sports news now. Fakhar Zaman hit a blistering ton and it combined with sublime half-century by Babar Azam as Pakistan had a 21-run lead via the Duckworth-Lewis method when play was stopped in this interesting match against New Zealand. New Zealand had scored 401 for 6 wickets in their 50 overs and were looking pretty for a clear victory, but then rain interrupted the play twice, once when Pakistan were 100 plus and then again when Pakistan had reached 200 for 1 wicket. And as a result of that, Pakistan were able to win by Duckworth-Lewis because they had only 1 wicket down. And at that stage of the match, the target by Duckworth-Lewis was 180, but Pakistan had already scored 201. So they were basically 21 runs ahead of the target and were declared the winners. But it was lucky because, of course, they had to score 200 runs more if it was still in a full-length match. Now, India will take on South Africa. This is, again, we're talking about the Cricket World Cup, and this is at the Eden Gardens, the great stadium, on Sunday. A lot of history. The men in blue have already qualified for the semi-finals. They will be looking to continue their momentum, but the Proteas are just behind, sniffing at success in a sense, with trying to challenge the table toppers. Well, we were hoping to run that story, but we're having a little technical problem. But it's an interesting match to watch. Tomorrow, India taking on South Africa. It's going to be action-packed. Our correspondent Narayan Singh will be sending us reports from there. That's all we have on this edition of DD India News Hour. But let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, on X, and Instagram. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. My name is Mark Lynn. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.